Welcome to a quiet voyage across endless seas of laughter, loyalty, and the dreams that never sink. This is not a story of battles and noise, but of tides and time, of the gentle current that carries us through the grand adventure of One Piece. As you listen, let the world slow down, hear the creak of the ship, the sigh of the wind against the sails, the distant echo of Luffy's laughter carried through the night. These facts are not for remembering, but for feeling. Small lanterns floating across a vast ocean of memory and myth will wander through the lives of pirates and kings, friends and enemies, dreamers and fools, and we'll see how every wave in this story leads to another sunrise. So wherever you are on land or sea, city or coast, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight, what hour it is, what the world looks like outside your window, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe so that whenever the waves call again, you can return to this calm journey where even the loudest storms eventually become lullabies. Fact 1. When Goldie, Roger stood upon the execution platform in Town, his final words were not a curse but a spark that lit the entire world aflame. And though the blade came down swiftly, its echo did not end with him, for in the moment he laughed, the sea itself seemed to tremble. The crowd became wind and whispers, and from that laughter, the great pirate era was born, making death itself a birth cry, showing that freedom, once spoken, cannot be silenced, and that dreams have their own tide, that even execution cannot drown. Fact 2. Eiichiro Oda created One Piece not from treasure maps or myths alone, but from a childhood fascination with pirates who were not thieves, but travelers, wanderers, seekers of truth in wide and merciless oceans. And he often said that his dream was to draw a world where adventure never ends, where the map keeps unfolding beyond every storm, and that vision became the world's heartbeat, an endless sea where laughter and loss are tied together by waves that remember every dream ever cast into them. Fact 3. Before One Piece was born, Oda sketched a small story called Romance Dawn, a name that still lives in the opening arc of the manga, a phrase meaning the beginning of love and adventure, showing that even before the Straw Hats ever set sail, their story was always one of affection for life, for friends, for freedom, and in those early pages, you can already feel Luffy's presence, smiling before he was even named, waiting for the right tide to carry him toward history's horizon. Fact 4. The execution of Roger was not an ending because Roger planned it that way, knowing his death would scatter his will like embers across the seas, that someone, somewhere, would hear those words and decide to chase what cannot be caught, and in that decision, the future would begin again, over and over, as long as people could still dream, proving that treasure is not gold but faith, not the weight of what you find, but the courage to keep searching even when the map turns to mist. Fact 5. Town, where Roger was born and executed, is called the town of the beginning and the end, a perfect circle in the world's geography, where every pirate's journey symbolically begins at the place it must one day return, making Roger and Luffy's stories inseparable from the start because they both smiled before death, both treated fate as a joke, both believed that laughter was the truest rebellion against fear, and in that shared smile lives the promise that even the end of the world can feel like sunrise. Fact 6. The first chapter of One Piece introduces not just Luffy, but the philosophy of his world, that power without purpose is hollow, that friendship without freedom is a cage, and that the sea exists to test both, washing away the false and leaving only what endures. When Luffy declares he will be the Pirate King, it is not a conquest but a confession, because to be the pirate king is not to rule, but to be the freest man alive, and freedom, in Oda's hands, is not escape but acceptance of risk, of pain, of endless wonder. Fact 7. The devil fruits, scattered like forbidden miracles across the seas, embody the story's theme of sacrifice, gifts that grant power but demand individuality in return, forcing those who eat them to lose the ability to swim, to surrender the ocean even as they gain dominion over it. They are symbols of humanity's contradiction, desire blooming into limitation, showing that every gift is also a chain, and that strength, in the end, is just another form of loneliness carried by those who dared to want too much. Fact 8. Shanks, the man who gave Luffy his hat, is the bridge between Roger's world and ours, a symbol of inherited will wrapped in warmth and restraint. He is both a pirate and a peacemaker, the one who taught Luffy that true courage is not never fearing pain, but knowing it and smiling anyway. The day he lost his arm saving the boy, the sea took his limb but gave him legacy, and his laughter in that moment became the first chapter's heartbeat, a reminder that kindness can be the greatest act of rebellion in a cruel world. Fact 9. The straw hat itself is a crown, not of power, but of promise, passed down from dreamer to dreamer, each adding their own chapter to the mythology of freedom. Its simplicity hides its weight, once belonging to Roger, then to Shanks, and now resting on Luffy's head. It carries generations of belief stitched into straw and thread. Every time the wind lifts it, the world remembers that dreams do not die. They travel, changing hands and names, whispering that what one man begins, another will finish, because the horizon belongs to everyone who dares to look toward it. Fact 10. At the heart of the first voyage from Fuchsia Village to the endless horizon lies a single truth that defines One Piece, that the world itself is a promise, vast and unfinished, waiting for laughter to fill its silence. The great pirate era is not about plunder, but possibility, not about treasure, but transformation. When Roger said his treasure lay waiting, he did not mean an object, he meant the adventure, the eternal motion of hope. And in that motion, as sails billow and stars awaken, begins the longest lullaby the sea has ever sung. Fact 11. Monkey D. Luffy's laughter, that bright and careless sound that seems to break even the silence of the deepest storms, is the first sign that he is not a hero meant to be obeyed, but a dream meant to be remembered, because every time he laughs, the world softens a little, the fear that lives inside others begins to fade, and even enemies feel its pull, that strange energy that turns battlefields into playgrounds, showing that Luffy's strength was never in his fists or his fruit, but in his ability to make others remember what joy feels like when the world has forgotten how to smile. Fact 12. The Gomu no Mi, now revealed to hold a secret older than the world itself, was once considered a strange joke of a power, a fruit that turned a boy into rubber, bending instead of breaking, and yet in that foolish elasticity lies the entire philosophy of One Piece, because to be free is to bend without losing your shape, to adapt without surrendering your soul, and Luffy, stretching his limbs toward the sky, shows that resilience is not defiance, but faith. Faith that every wound can become laughter, every defeat another chance to reach farther. Fact 13. Oda once said that he gave Luffy the ability to stretch, not to make him powerful, but to make him funny, because he believed that humor is what keeps courage alive, that laughter is the truest proof of will, and this idea runs through the veins of the story, turning combat into conversation, tragedy into rhythm, showing that even in the darkest moments, joy can be resistance. And Luffy, with his smile wide enough to hold the horizon, becomes not just a pirate, but a living argument for the survival of hope. Fact 14. The D in Luffy's name, mysterious and unspoken, connects him to generations of dreamers and rebels whose only shared trait is their refusal to kneel before impossible odds. And though the meaning remains hidden, the pattern is clear. Every bearer of that initial laughs in the face of fate, treating prophecy as suggestion and death as inconvenience, showing that the will of D is not a bloodline but an instinct, the eternal whisper that the world can be broken and remade by those who carry the courage to smile through its collapse. Fact 15. Luffy's bond with Shanks is the story's first act of faith, a passing of the torch from an era that believed in gold to one that believes in people. The day Shanks gave him the straw hat, he was not crowning a successor but blessing a promise. And when he sailed away, leaving that small boy crying on the pier, the ocean seemed to bow between them, recognizing that this was not the end of childhood, but the beginning of legend, a love letter between mentor and student, written entirely in trust and wind. Fact 16. From his earliest battles, Luffy reveals that his code of justice is deeply personal. He never fights for abstract ideals or kingdoms, only for people, and in that simplicity lies his strength. He does not seek to change the world. He seeks to protect the laughter within it, and somehow, through that narrow focus, he ends up reshaping everything. His creed is wordless yet absolute. No one has the right to take another's freedom. It is not philosophy, but instinct, the heartbeat of a boy who never learned how to bow. Fact 17. Oda designed Luffy's straw hat with uneven lines, giving it an imperfect shape that feels lived in, traveled, loved, because perfection, he said, has no warmth. The hat's frayed edges carry the weight of the seas it has crossed, the battles it has witnessed, and every time it's blown from his head, the reader feels the ache of separation, as if a part of the world's spirit has been lifted by the wind. It is both shield and symbol, the story's softest relic, protecting dreams as armor made of sunlight and promise. Fact 18. Luffy's moral compass, though simple, bends toward profound truths. When he meets Alvida, Buggy, or Arlong, his anger always blooms from empathy, not pride. He cannot stand seeing others stripped of choice, because he knows instinctively that tyranny begins in silence, in the moment when people stop speaking their hearts. His rebellion is emotional, not intellectual. He fights not because he believes he is right, but because he refuses to believe anyone deserves to feel small. His justice is laughter against oppression, his victory the return of someone else's smile. Fact 19. The red color of Luffy's vest, worn since the beginning, was chosen to reflect both danger and joy. Oda said it represents the heart's fire, a visual shorthand for life itself. In animation, that red became iconic, glowing against blue seas and golden skies, like a tiny flame wandering through eternity. Every era of One Piece redraws the vest, yet the meaning never changes. It is the color of motion, of energy that refuses to die, the same shade seen at sunrise, reminding viewers that no matter how dark the night, warmth always returns. Fact 20. At his core, Luffy is not a conqueror but a liberator of souls. Every island he visits, every ally he saves, feels lighter when he leaves, as if his presence reminds the world how to breathe. He is chaos given kindness, rebellion shaped into joy, a reminder that power is not the right to rule but the freedom to choose what kind of person to be. In his wake, even the sea seems to hum, the waves softer, the wind gentler, whispering the same words over and over. That laughter, once shared, is a kind of immortality. Fact 21. When Roronoa Zoro first appears, tied to a post in a marine courtyard beneath the burning sun, he is not introduced as a hero, but as a man already enduring his own punishment. And from the first moment, his stillness speaks louder than any battle cry could. His dream, to become the world's greatest swordsman, is born not from ambition but from a promise, a vow whispered over a grave, making every cut he takes, every scar he earns, a form of remembrance. Zoro's silence is not coldness, it is loyalty sculpted into steel. Fact 22. Oda designed Zoro as the embodiment of will turned blade, and his three-sword style, absurd yet beautiful, represents the balance between chaos, creativity, and control. He carries one sword for his past, one for his present, and one for the future, and when he fights, the world seems to narrow to a single line, a horizon made of motion. Every swing is an act of faith in his own endurance, and when he falls, as he does beneath Mihawk's shadow, his refusal to die becomes its own kind of victory. He is a man who bleeds instead of breaking. Fact 23. Zoro's vow to never lose again is spoken, kneeling in defeat, his swords driven into the ground, his pride shattered yet unbent. It is one of the rare moments in One Piece where silence screams louder than dialogue, the weight of failure transforming into resolve. Luffy's response, simple, honest, accepting, seals their bond. From that day onward, Zoro no longer fights for himself alone. His blade belongs to a dream shared between friends, and the sound of his sword slicing through air becomes the story's heartbeat, steady, unwavering, eternal. Fact 24. Nami's story begins not with laughter, but with survival. Her hands draw maps to freedom, yet they tremble under the weight of Arlong's mark. She is proof that greed and love can coexist, that sometimes theft is a form of rebellion, that even broken people can chart their way back to light. When she finally asks Luffy for help, tears staining the soil beneath her knife, it is not weakness but faith, the moment she allows herself to believe in someone else again. The hat on her head that day is more than kindness, it is redemption. Fact 25. Oda once said that Nami's strength lies in her ability to carry fear without surrendering to it. Unlike warriors who fight monsters, she fights despair, the quiet kind that grows in isolation. Her obsession with navigation is control disguised as comfort, a way to make the unpredictable world make sense. When she commands the ship, she commands chaos itself, turning storms into symphonies. Her maps are prayers, each line a memory, each island a promise that no sea can erase what love has charted. Nami is the mind of the Straw Hats, the compass of their hearts. Fact 26. Usopp, the storyteller of lies, enters the crew as the voice of human frailty, the boy who dreams of being a brave warrior but shakes before every battle. His tall tales are not deceit but preparation, rehearsals for courage. Every exaggeration he tells is an attempt to convince himself that one day the stories will come true. When he stands on the Going Mary's deck, shouting at the sea as if daring the world to listen, the line between truth and imagination dissolves. In a story about gods and monsters, he is proof that bravery is built, not born. Fact 27. Oda created Usopp to represent every reader who feels small yet wants to matter. And that is why his lies always come true, because in the world of One Piece, belief is a kind of magic. when he fires the first shot against giants, when he defends his friends with trembling hands, when he stands up to Luffy himself over a broken ship, his fear becomes poetry. Usopp's courage is quiet, built in pieces carved from doubt. He teaches that honesty does not mean never lying. It means admitting you're afraid and fighting anyway. Fact 28. Sanji's first appearance, cigarette smoke curling around his face as he cooks for strangers in Baratie, introduces the most grounded dream in the series, to find the all blue, a sea where every fish from every ocean gathers. His goal is not wealth or glory, but harmony, the blending of flavors and lives. Oda said he wanted Sanji's dream to taste like peace. Every meal he serves is an act of gratitude, every fight a defense of dignity. He feeds his enemies, curses with love, bleeds elegantly, a gentleman sculpted from fire and forgiveness. Fact 29. Sanji's chivalry, his refusal to harm women even at his own peril, comes from the void left by his mother's death and the cruelty of his father. His politeness is rebellion, a way of choosing tenderness in a world that taught him cruelty. When he kneels to serve, it is not submission but defiance, his way of proving that kindness is strength. Each dish he cooks carries memory. Each cigarette exhaled another vow to never forget hunger. His kicks are rhythm, his words poetry, his silence prayer. He fights with grace because he has already survived ugliness. Fact 30. The first four Straw Hats, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, are not allies by design, but by destiny, each carrying a wound that finds its echo in the others. They come together like broken pieces of a compass, incomplete alone but whole when aligned by faith. Oda once said that the Straw Hats are a single person divided into 8 hearts. Together they embody every facet of the dream: courage, intelligence, imagination, compassion, and when they finally raise their flag above the waves, it is not just a pirate emblem, but a declaration that family can be chosen and that laughter can be a kind of home. Fact 31. The Going Merry, the Straw Hats' first ship, was not just wood and sail, but a soul born from laughter and storms, a vessel built to carry not just bodies but dreams. Oda designed her with gentle curves and a poses, smiling figurehead because he wanted her to feel alive, a friend disguised as transportation, a guardian wrapped in timber and rope. Every plank creaks like a heartbeat. Every gust of wind through her sails sounds like breathing. And though she cannot speak, the crew always hears her voice, a soft hum that says, "Keep going, I'll carry you." Fact 32. When Kaya gifted the Going Merry to the Straw Hats, it symbolized the first exchange of faith between dreamers and those who stay behind, a passing of hope from land to sea. Kaya, frail yet fearless, sent her spirit with them through that ship, a promise that kindness could travel farther than courage. Oda said that ships in one piece are metaphors for friendship, fragile, constantly repaired, always moving forward despite the damage. The merry, patched and battered, becomes proof that what carries you through the world is never perfection, but love stubborn enough to float. Fact 33. The Going Merry's Klabouterman, the ship spirit, who appears near the end of her life, comes from old sailor legend, the belief that every vessel gains a soul when its crew loves it enough. When the Merry speaks, apologizing for breaking and thanking them for caring, the moment turns the impossible into grace. Oda said he cried while drawing it because it was the first time the sea itself spoke back. The ship's farewell is not tragedy but transcendence, a reminder that even things that cannot live can still love. Fact 34. The burning of the Going Merry is one of the most human moments in One Piece. A funeral not for a person, but for a shared dream. The flames that consume her reflect not destruction but completion, the end of one journey to make room for another. Luffy's tears, rare and unrestrained, fall like rain on her ashes, and in that mixture of fire and water, the story reaches its first emotional high tide. The ship that once carried them across oceans now carries them forward in spirit, her warmth living in every new sunrise. Fact 35. The Grand Line itself is a living paradox, a sea that breaks logic, defies navigation, and demands surrender before it offers passage. Oda designed it to represent the unpredictability of life, the truth that adventure is not a straight path but a spiral of storms and stillness. The reverse mountain, where the four seas converge into chaos, stands as a monument to impossible beginnings, a waterfall flowing upward, a metaphor for defying gravity and expectation alike. Entering it is not conquest, it is rebirth, a return to wonder disguised as peril. Fact 36. The log pose, that strange compass that points not north but toward the next island, is more than a navigational tool. It is philosophy made tangible. It reminds the crew that the future cannot be chosen freely. It must be accepted, island by island, challenge by challenge. The Grand Line decides your path, but your heart decides what you make of it. In this world, direction is not control but trust, a delicate pact between sailor and sea, teaching that adventure's beauty lies not in certainty but in surrender. Fact 37. Every island on the Grand Line acts as a reflection of humanity itself. One ruled by science, another by fear, another by dreams, and Oda crafted each to test a specific emotion within the Straw Hats. He once said that the Grand Line is the world's heart, sliced into pieces and scattered. Each landmass represents a fragment of our own nature, and by traveling through them, the crew collects not just experiences but pieces of understanding. The ocean becomes both obstacle and teacher, turning voyage into awakening. Fact 38. The Sea Kings, those colossal beings that roam beneath the surface, embody the untamed spirit of nature, older than empires, indifferent to human will. Oda described them as the heartbeat of the ocean, a reminder that no matter how vast humanity's ambition grows, the sea is older, deeper, freer. When they rise from the depths, the story itself slows, as if bowing to something sacred. Their eyes are not cruel, they are ancient, seeing not individuals but eras, reminding the reader that the world belongs not to men, but to the tide. Fact 39. In One Piece, weather itself is a living character, whimsical, violent, unpredictable, mirroring the emotional landscape of the story. The calm belt, where monsters dwell and winds die, is the embodiment of stasis, the danger of peace without motion. Oda created it to symbolize fear of stillness, the truth that life without struggle ceases to grow. Nami's maps, therefore, are not just guides but dialogues with chaos, her way of speaking to the sky, decoding emotion into geometry, transforming uncertainty into direction. Fact 40. Every voyage between islands, every stretch of open sea where nothing happens, carries the same quiet rhythm that defines One Piece. The sound of waves against wood, laughter floating through salt air, and dreams resting in the distance like faint stars. Oda fills these moments with small gestures, shared meals, silly arguments, soft songs, because he knows adventure is not made of battles but of pauses. The ocean, infinite and indifferent, listens silently, carrying their voices like lullabies across eternity. And in that stillness, One Piece becomes what it has always been, a love story between people and the sea. Fact 41. The 7 warlords of the sea were created not as heroes or villains, but as reflections of compromised pirates who traded freedom for legitimacy, who chose to serve the world's order rather than defy it outright. Oda said they symbolize the illusion of control, the idea that even the strongest eventually bow to something greater than themselves. Crocodile, Mihawk, Hancock, Doflamingo, each carries the scars of pride reined in by politics, showing that in a world obsessed with power, even pirates can become bureaucrats when the dream of freedom begins to fade beneath the weight of survival. Fact 42. Crocodile, the first warlord to stand against Luffy, is perhaps the most deliberate echo of the old world, a man who sought a kingdom not for gold but for permanence. His desert empire in Alabasta is a mirror of decay, his sand powers representing ambition that crumbles to dust. Oda once explained that Crocodile's arrogance comes from fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of losing control. When Luffy defeats him, it is not simply a clash of strength, but of philosophy, optimism, outlasting cynicism, life-defeating stagnation, youth reminding age that hope refuses to die quietly. Fact 43. Nico Robin's introduction during the Alabasta arc marks the story's first descent into true historical mystery, the moment One Piece shifts from adventure to mythology. Robin, the archaeologist who can read the poneglyphs, carries within her the knowledge that terrifies the world. She is both scholar and survivor, the last whisper of an erased civilization. Her calmness is armor, her smile a lie she perfected as a child watching her home burn. Every time she says, "I want to live," the world shakes a little because truth, once spoken, has a way of tearing walls apart. Fact 44. The poneglyphs, massive indestructible stones inscribed with lost language, are the memory of a silenced world. Oda based them on real-world relics, obelisks, tablets, and the weight of forgotten truths. They stand like gravestones scattered across the seas, their existence proof that history is not written by victors but hidden by them. The void century carved into those stones is more than a secret, it is a wound, a gap in collective memory, showing that power's greatest weapon is not violence, but erasure. And Robin, by reading them, becomes the world's last heartbeat of remembrance. Fact 45. The Alabasta Saga represents One Piece's first epic, a desert opera of betrayal, loyalty, and the cost of belief. Princess Vivi's plea to her people not to fight each other underlines Oda's central theme, that understanding is stronger than might. The Straw Hats, once wanderers, become protectors, their laughter carrying through sandstorms as the only sound pure enough to cut through deception. When they raise their arms with the X marks on their wrists, promising never to forget her, the gesture becomes ritual, a quiet rebellion against distance, proving that true bonds survive even the endless sea. Fact 46. The tone of the series shifts after Alabasta, maturing alongside its audience. Oda begins to explore the structure of power more openly, marines, revolutionaries, and the unseen celestial dragons weaving a moral net over the world. He once said, "A hero in one nation is a villain in another," and that ambiguity becomes the compass of later arcs. Every flag raised, every battle fought, is filtered through perspective, turning the seas into a philosophical map where justice depends on the eye that sees it, and the truth becomes as elusive as the One Piece itself. Fact 47. The Skypiea arc, often misunderstood as filler, is Oda's meditation on faith, a floating world built on belief and arrogance, where gods fall and mortals learn to fly. Enel, the self-proclaimed god of thunder, embodies divine narcissism, absolute power, devoid of compassion. When Luffy, a man of rubber, defeats him, it is poetry. The man who cannot conduct electricity topples the one who believes himself lightning incarnate. The symbolism is clear. True divinity lies not in power, but in laughter, and even heaven trembles before a smile that refuses to worship fear. Fact 48. Skypia's golden city of Shandora represents the fusion of history and myth, an ancient civilization punished for protecting truth. The bell that rings at the ark's end carries more than sound. It carries memory, connecting the sky and the earth, the past and the present. Oda said, that moment was his favorite sound that travels across generations. It is the sound of hope being heard by those who never stopped listening. The bell's echo continues through the series, reminding readers that discovery is not about finding what was lost, but remembering what was silenced. Fact 49. The first sight of Nico Robin smiling genuinely, surrounded by her new crew, is one of the quietest revolutions in One Piece. Her face, always calm, finally softens, and in that softness lies healing. She, who once studied ruins, has found living proof of the world's beauty. Her acceptance into the crew transforms her from ghost to historian of the present, showing that history is not just about remembering the dead, but cherishing the living. Her laughter joins theirs, fragile but free, another thread in the tapestry of voices that make the Going Merry a home. Fact 50. By the end of the early Grand Line adventures, the Straw Hats have already defined what it means to be pirates in Oda's world, not thieves of gold, but gatherers of souls, traveling not to claim but to connect. Each island left behind becomes a chapter of shared emotion, each victory another reminder that power only matters when it protects something precious. As the Merry sails onward, her flag snapping like heartbeat against the wind, the crew's laughter carries across the ocean, blending with the waves' eternal rhythm, proof that joy itself can be a kind of justice. Fact 51. As the Going Merry sails deeper into the Grand Line, the world itself begins to darken, shadows lengthen, laughter becomes rarer, and the seas feel heavier, as though burdened by the secrets they carry. Oda begins to weave sorrow into the wind, showing that even in a story built on joy, pain is its inevitable companion. The Straw Hats, still smiling, begin to encounter the limits of their own strength, learning that dreams are not protected by will alone but by sacrifice, and that to live freely means accepting that freedom demands its price. Fact 52. The appearance of Admiral Aokiji marks the moment the Straw Hats truly meet the weight of the world's order. His presence is not loud or cruel. It is calm, almost lazy, and that makes it terrifying. Aokiji represents the justice of resignation, the idea that peace can exist only through compromise with corruption. When he spares Robin's life, it is not mercy, but acknowledgement of her burden. His icy powers freeze not just the sea, but the illusion that the crew can remain untouched by politics. From that moment onward, innocence becomes memory. Fact 53. The Water 7 arc begins as a celebration of craftsmanship, a city of canals and shipwrights, but beneath its glimmering surface lies betrayal, paranoia, and loss. The Going Merry begins to falter, her keel cracked beyond repair, and the crew faces the painful truth that even love has limits. Their arguments over whether to abandon her mirror, the human struggle against time, the inability to let go of what has carried us, the refusal to accept change. The The storm that follows is not weather but grief, and Oda captures it with heartbreaking tenderness. Fact 54. Usopp's departure from the crew, born from pride and love, is one of the rawest emotional moments in One Piece. His fight with Luffy is not about a ship but about worth, about what it means to be weak in a world that worships strength. Every punch they trade feels like an apology neither can speak. When Usopp stands against his captain, crying through clenched teeth, the story strips itself bare. No treasure, no empire, just two boys who love something too much to let it go. The silence after their fight is the sound of growing up. Fact 55. The Going Mary's final appearance, sailing on her own through fire and wreckage to save her crew, remains one of Oda's purest miracles. It defies physics, reason, and despair, powered only by memory and gratitude. The ship, once inanimate, becomes proof that love can grant life, that devotion itself can become motion. When the Mary speaks, her words are not sorrowful but serene. I'm happy. It is the gentlest farewell in all of anime, a lullaby sung by wood and wind. Her ashes drift into the sky like lanterns, carrying every smile she ever held. Fact 56. Enies Lobby rises from the sea like judgment itself, a fortress of law so vast it seems to touch the heavens, a city built to hide cruelty behind architecture. The world government's flag flutters above it, symbolizing the hypocrisy of order, a banner that preaches justice while burning truth. Oda drew it as a literal bridge between worlds connecting human law and divine arrogance. When the Straw Hats declare war by setting its flag ablaze, the sky turns red, and for the first time, laughter becomes rebellion, courage becomes blasphemy, and friendship becomes revolution. Fact 57. Robin's cry, "I want to live," is the voice of every soul silenced by fear. Those 4 words, simple yet absolute, mark the moment One Piece ceases to be just a pirate story and becomes a testament to the human spirit. Her plea is not for rescue, but for permission to exist. The world called her demon, but Luffy's outstretched hand rewrites her name into something sacred. It is not salvation he offers, but solidarity, a promise that she will never again have to stand alone beneath the weight of the world's lies. Fact 58. The Buster Call that destroys Enies Lobby is the story's purest depiction of systemic violence, a storm of fire and steel unleashed without question. The Marines who fire those cannons believe themselves righteous, yet they destroy without seeing faces, without knowing names. Oda crafts the scene like a requiem, the sky split open by light too bright to be holy. Amid that chaos, the Straw Hats stand together, small but unyielding, shouting their dreams into the roar. It is the most defiant sound imaginable, laughter echoing over annihilation, proving that ideals outlive institutions. Fact 59. Frankie's introduction into the crew closes the wound left by the Mary's death. A craftsman born from metal and flame, he carries within him the ability to build what time destroys. His cyborg body, patched and imperfect, mirrors the ship he creates, the Thousand Sunny, a vessel made not to replace the Mary but to continue her spirit. When he joins the crew, his laughter fills the void left behind, wild and booming, reminding them that grief can forge new creation, that tears and joy can coexist without contradiction. Fact 60. The Thousand Sunny's first voyage feels like rebirth. New sails, new laughter, the sea stretching endlessly before them once more. Beneath her gleaming decks lies wood from the Atom Tree, said to never rot, symbolizing endurance. Yet Oda made sure to give the ship a lion's face, not to suggest power, but courage. The Sunny doesn't roar in dominance but in joy, a perpetual sunrise on the waves. As she cuts through the sea, carrying the dreams of those lost and those still living, she becomes proof that adventure itself never dies. It simply changes form. Fact 61. Sabaody Archipelago stands as the turning point where wonder turns to horror. The glistening bubbles of the mangrove trees floating like fragile dreams above a rot of cruelty. Here, the Straw Hats encounter not monsters, but humans made monstrous by power, the celestial dragons, gods by bloodline, whose existence reveals that the true villain of the world is hierarchy itself. When Luffy strikes one of them, the act shatters centuries of fear, his fist landing not just on a man but on an entire system built on silence. In that single punch, One Piece finds its revolution. Fact 62. The celestial dragons, Oda's darkest creation, are descended from the founders of the world government creatures, draped in gold and arrogance, who breathe filtered air to avoid contact with lesser beings. Their cruelty is almost casual, born of generations without consequence. Oda designed them as a warning about inherited privilege, about the way history turns oppression into tradition. When one enslaves a man with a chain as if he were property, the panel feels cold, clinical, empty of humanity. It's not violence that makes them terrifying, it's apathy polished into elegance. Fact 63. The introduction of the supernovas, the new generation of pirates gathered at Sabaody, expands the story's scale beyond comprehension. Kid, Law, Hawkins, Apu, Bonnie, and others emerge not as rivals, but as different answers to the same question. What does freedom mean? Oda called them Luffy's mirrors, each reflecting what he could become if laughter turned to cynicism or mercy to rage. In their design lies variety, chaos, youth proof that the sea does not choose heroes, it breeds possibility. The Grand Line, once vast, suddenly feels small under so many dreams. Fact 64. When Admiral Kizaru descends upon Sabaody in a beam of light, the story bends beneath the weight of inevitability. His power, the speed of light itself, makes him untouchable, a symbol of justice that sees everything yet cares for nothing. The Straw Hats fight, but the air itself betrays them, light too fast to resist. Their confidence shatters, laughter turns to disbelief. In this moment, Oda paints helplessness in golden hues, showing that even the bravest hearts must someday meet something too vast to fight. Their defeat is not failure, it is pause, breath before rebirth. Fact 65. Bartholomew Kuma, the quiet revolutionary turned government weapon, is both executioner and savior. His power, the ability to repel anything, even pain, even memory, becomes paradoxical mercy. When he sends each straw hat flying to distant corners of the world, it feels like annihilation. But it is love hidden in exile. Kuma's silence carries more kindness than words could hold. Oda later revealed that this moment was meant to feel like being scattered by fate, each friend a seed flung into separate soil, destined to grow stronger before reunion. Fact 66. The image of Luffy kneeling in the ruins of Sabaody, his fists pressed into the earth as he cries for his vanished crew, is the soundless heart of One Piece's sorrow. He, who had defied gods and governments, is left alone, powerless. The bubbles around him burst softly, fragile symbols of lost innocence. For the first time, he cannot laugh. The sea, which once carried his dreams, now feels endless and empty. This moment transforms the boy who wanted to be free into a man who understands the loneliness that freedom sometimes demands. Fact 67. Amazon Lily, the island where Luffy lands, is Oda's quiet inversion of gender and power, a world ruled by women who live without men, their strength both nurturing and terrifying. Boa Hancock, their empress, embodies contradiction, cruel to her enemies, gentle to her people, and completely undone by love. Her affection for Luffy is not romance but recognition, the realization that true freedom looks nothing like dominance. Luffy's indifference to beauty and his pure kindness disarm her, showing that respect, not power, is the rarest treasure of all. Fact 68. The journey to Impel Down marks Luffy's transformation from dreamer to rescuer. The world's greatest prison, carved into the ocean's depths, becomes a descent into myth circles of suffering that echo Dante's Inferno. Each level drips with symbolism: beasts, fire, ice, despair. Yet amid the horror, Luffy moves forward, driven not by justice but love. His mission to save Ace becomes pilgrimage, his defiance a prayer shouted into darkness. The deeper he goes, the clearer it becomes. Freedom means nothing if it cannot reach those trapped below. Fact 69. Magellan, the warden of Impel Down, rules through fear, yet even he is drawn with compassion. His poison is both weapon and curse, a body turned against itself. Oda writes him as proof that even villains can suffer from their own design. His duty consumes him, literally. Luffy's confrontation with him is not victory but endurance, the act of surviving truth. As he collapses, burned and broken yet still smiling, it becomes clear that willpower in One Piece is not defiance of pain, but partnership with it, the acceptance that agony is part of growth. Fact 70. The escape from Impel Down, with prisoners, revolutionaries, and pirates united under a single banner of chaos, is the series' most improbable miracle. Jinbei, Ivankov, Buggy, and Crocodile, enemies and allies alike, join Luffy in defiance of the impossible. Their shared laughter in the face of death becomes a chorus for all who've ever been bound. The ocean that waits above them feels heavier now, as if aware that something sacred has survived. When the sunlight finally returns, washing their battered faces in gold, it feels not like freedom achieved, but hope reborn. Fact 71. Marineford begins with silence, a still ocean beneath gray skies, the world holding its breath before judgment. The war that unfolds there is not about justice or piracy, but the collision of dreams too large to coexist. Whitebeard's fleet sails like an old god's heartbeat, steady, defiant, vast. The Marines stand as the embodiment of structure, their formation perfect, their morality brittle. In this single battlefield, Oda compresses every theme of One Piece: family, freedom, sacrifice, and the price of belief. The air crackles with prophecy, the end of an era disguised as spectacle. Fact 72. Portgas D. Ace, the son of the Pirate King, carries in his name the unbearable weight of legacy. His smile hides confusion, born cursed, raised blessed. He never knew whether the world wanted him alive. Oda described Ace as a flame that refuses to believe it is light. His fire burns not for conquest but for belonging. His bond with Luffy transcends blood, forged in shared hunger and laughter. Every step toward Marineford is not escape, but return the journey of a man seeking proof that he deserved to be born. Fact 73. Whitebeard's declaration, roaring across the battlefield, "The One Piece is real," becomes more than revelation, it is resurrection. Spoken in the moment of his death, the words reignite the age Roger began, turning despair into legend once more. His fall, colossal and serene, is drawn like the collapse of a mountain. He dies standing, his back unscarred, proof that he never fled from life. The ground beneath him splits, the sea boils, and yet his smile remains. Oda turns mortality into monument, showing that death, when met without regret, can itself be a form of victory. Fact 74. Luffy's arrival at Marineford transforms chaos into desperation. The boy who once fought for food now fights against fate. Every injury he sustains, every scream torn from his throat, feels like the sound of humanity refusing extinction. His body, broken beyond reason, moves through will alone. Ivankov calls him a miracle made of blood, and he is not divine, not perfect, but unkillable in spirit. His hands tremble, his heart burns, and through tears and exhaustion, he proves the story's oldest truth, that love, when pure enough, makes even gods hesitate. Fact 75. Ace's final moments are drawn without sound. No music, no dialogue beyond a single thank you. He dies with a smile that mirrors his brother's flames dissolving into light. His last words are gratitude, not for salvation, but for existence. Thank you for loving me. In that sentence lies the entirety of One Piece's heart. His body falls, and the world fractures, but the warmth he leaves behind becomes the fire that carries Luffy forward. The screen fades white, not black, because endings in Oda's universe are only beginnings written in gentler ink. Fact 76. Garp's anguish, as both hero and grandfather, embodies the story's tragedy of divided loyalties. He stands between love and duty, powerless to choose either without breaking. When Sengoku holds him back, his tears are not weakness but confession, the recognition that justice, when absolute, can only destroy. Oda gives him no redemption, only memory. His grief becomes the unspoken voice of every soldier who has ever realized too late that order and kindness cannot share a flag. The war's true casualties are not the fallen, but those left standing, hollowed by victory. Fact 77. Blackbeard's arrival at Marineford shifts the tone from grief to revelation. His darkness swallows the light, both literally and thematically. He is the inversion of Luffy, not freedom, but hunger disguised as it, not laughter, but mockery of it. When he steals Whitebeard's power, it is less a triumph than a blasphemy, the birth of a world that has lost its moral compass. Oda uses him as mirror and warning. The dream of the sea, corrupted by greed, becomes nightmare. Blackbeard laughs because he knows the truth chaos is easier to build than justice. Fact 78. Jinbei's act of shielding Luffy from Akainu's magma fist is one of the most quietly powerful scenes in the war. A former enemy turned brother, Jinbei embodies loyalty without condition. His body burns, but his resolve remains untouched. "Don't let your brother's death go to waste," he says, his voice trembling yet certain. That single sentence rescues Luffy from despair. Jinbei becomes the anchor that holds the boy's sanity, the living reminder that even after loss, connection endures. From that day, Luffy's crew is not just dreamers, they are survivors bound by flame and forgiveness. Fact 79. After the war, the ocean feels emptier, quieter. The headlines call it victory, but the world's silence betrays mourning. Oda slows the pacing deliberately, panels stretch wider, dialogue grows sparse, the sea becomes reflective. Luffy, lying broken on the ground, no longer smiles. His scars, physical and emotional, become the series' punctuation mark. The story itself pauses, as though catching breath after a long cry. It is the first time readers see a world without direction, a hero without purpose, a dream too heavy to lift. Even the sun seems unsure it should rise again. Fact 80. At Ace's grave, flanked by Whitebeards, Luffy leaves offerings of food, flowers, and his hat's shadow. He weeps, but within the tears, something steadier begins to glow, resolve reborn from ruin. The words carved into the gravestones do not speak of power, but of freedom, of lives lived without apology. As the wind carries petals into the sea, Luffy remembers his promise to never lose another friend. That vow, whispered into the horizon, becomes the axis upon which the next 1,000 chapters turn, the rebirth of laughter after the long silence of grief. Fact 81. The 2-year time skip begins not as a leap forward, but as a quiet pause in motion, a rare stillness where the waves no longer chase the horizon, and each member of the Straw Hats must learn to stand alone again, scattered across islands that test their hearts more than their hands. Oda described it as a deep breath before the next storm, and in that breath, the crew transforms. Luffy learns the language of beasts and the rhythm of nature. Zoro kneels before Mihawk's shadow. Nami reads the sky as scripture, each becoming both student and soul reborn. Fact 82. On Ruskaina, where Luffy trains under Rayleigh, time moves differently, heavy and slow, like sunlight thickened by memory. The forest is alive with monsters and silence, a perfect reflection of his own untamed will. Rayleigh does not teach him how to fight, but how to listen to his body, to the haki that hums beneath the skin, to the breath of those he loves and those who would kill him. When Luffy finally learns to coat his fists with invisible strength, it feels less like evolution and more like recognition, the awakening of something ancient within him that always knew how to protect. Fact 83. Zoro's years beneath Mihawk's gaze are less apprenticeship than pilgrimage. Each swing of the sword is prayer, each scar a stanza in an endless hymn to resolve. Oda once said that Zoro's power is measured not by victories, but by endurance, the ability to continue even when his world shrinks to blood and silence. When he finally bows before Mihawk and asks for training, it is not surrender but transcendence. The moment pride evolves into purpose. His solitude sharpens him, and when he returns, one eye closed, it is as though he has chosen to see the world only through will. Fact 84. Nami's time on Witheria turns her into a scholar of storms. The island, a floating labyrinth of clouds and instruments, teaches her that chaos can be mapped, that even the wind has patterns if one listens with enough patience. Her laughter returns, this time steadier, less desperate. When she flies her first ship through lightning, her face lit by golden veins of electricity, Oda draws her as radiant as dawn itself. She no longer fears the sea's cruelty, she converses with it, understanding that weather is not enemy but partner, a dialogue written in wind. Fact 85. Usopp's exile on Boyne Archipelago begins as humiliation, but ends as transformation. The island devours itself endlessly, a world of hunger and illusion, yet within that madness, he learns discipline. His body hardens, his fear becomes focus, and the lies he once told begin to sound like predictions again. When he finally emerges stronger, leaner, and with a new resolve, his first words are simple: "I want to see my captain." His longing becomes the quiet heartbeat of reunion, the storyteller returning to finish the tale he once began in trembling whispers. Fact 86. Sanji's nightmare on Momoiro Island is comic and cruel, an island of Okama, who challenge his pride and perception. Oda fills it with laughter that hides lessons. The humiliation becomes humility. The chase becomes understanding. He learns new techniques from people he once mocked, and through it, learns kindness deeper than before. His return to the sea is marked not by swagger but gratitude. Beneath his jokes lies acceptance. He has seen himself through the world's eyes and survived. His kicks grow stronger because his heart grows lighter. His chivalry now extends not just to women, but to anyone who suffers. Fact 87. Frankie's transformation on Karakuri Island, the birthplace of Dr. Vegapunk, marks the union of science and soul. Surrounded by relics of impossible machines, he turns his grief into construction, his laughter into invention. When he rebuilds himself with new weapons and energy, he jokes that he's more super than ever, yet beneath that joy lies reverence. He understands now that creation is an act of love, not ego. The Thousand Sunnies upgrades, hidden within his new design, carry pieces of every fallen friend. His body becomes museum, memory, miracle proof that progress can coexist with tenderness. Fact 88. Brooks returned to life, and his journey as a musician once more deepens the story's meditation on time. His exile in the Florian Triangle, decades spent alone with nothing but memory and bones, taught him that existence is not measured by heartbeat, but by song. In his 2 years apart, he tours as the Soul King, his music uniting the living and the dead. Oda said that Brook embodies the laughter of those who refuse to stop existing. His melodies become bridges, connecting grief to joy, and his violin's echo sounds like the sea forgiving itself. Fact 89. Chopper's studies on the Torino Kingdom show the evolution of innocence into wisdom. Among giant birds and primitive tribes, he learns medicine beyond textbooks. He learns healing as empathy. The boy who once sought to cure others to prove his worth now heals because he understands pain. His new powers, monstrous and gentle at once, reflect his dual nature, beast and doctor, child and guardian. When he looks into the mirror before returning, he smiles shyly and says, "Now I can help them all." His dream remains the same, only deeper, curing the world, one wound at a time. Fact 90. When the Straw Hats finally reunite on Sabaody after 2 years apart, their laughter returns with the weight of everything they've endured. The ocean seems brighter, the air lighter, as if the world itself recognizes the restoration of balance. No grand speech marks their reunion, just joy, banter, chaos, and the feeling of belonging rediscovered. Oda draws the moment with almost reverent calm, the bubbles glinting above them like memories turned to light. They are no longer the same crew that once trembled before an admiral. They are dreamers reborn, their scars turned into stars, their journey ready to begin again. Fact 91. The new world is not a place, but a revelation, an ocean that behaves like consciousness itself, shifting, unpredictable, testing the will of those who dare to cross it. Oda described it as a sea that listens, one that responds to courage, greed, or fear as though alive. Each island within it is its own philosophy, a world unto itself. The Straw Hats enter not as conquerors but as wanderers reborn, their laughter quieter now, but stronger, resonant with the weight of memory. Every wave that crashes seems to whisper, "Are you ready to dream again, even after loss?" Fact 92. Fishman Island, the first great destination of the New World, mirrors humanity's ancient pain prejudice, slavery, the desperate yearning for equality beneath the sea. Oda writes it as a fairy tale drowned in salt water. The light from the surface reaches the ocean floor like diluted hope, soft and fragile. Queen Otohime's vision of peace, her dream that humans and fishmen could one day walk side by side beneath the same sky, becomes a prophecy written in sorrow. When Luffy promises to make that dream real, the ocean itself seems to exhale, as though hope has finally touched its depths. Fact 93. Jinbei's joining of the Straw Hats fulfills the long arc of reconciliation between the sea's two races. Once a warrior for vengeance, he becomes the calm within the crew's storm, the moral compass who understands both rage and forgiveness. His bond with Luffy transcends loyalty. It becomes faith. Oda called Jinbei the ocean's conscience, a man whose laughter carries the gravity of tides. When he kneels before Luffy to pledge his life, it feels not like subservience, but reunion, the sea itself returning to the boy who once shouted at the world to let him be free. Fact 94. Punk Hazard marks the moment when One Piece begins to reveal its machinery, science, power, and politics, interwoven like the strands of a great unseen rope. The island is a wound that refuses to heal, fire and ice locked in eternal argument. Caesar Clown, its master of poison, represents corruption disguised as intellect, a parody of human ambition gone too far. Oda fills the air with gas and guilt, showing that the true danger of progress lies not in what it creates, but in how easily it justifies itself. Here, invention becomes cruelty's favorite disguise. Fact 95. The children experimented on by Caesar symbolize the cost of progress. Their trembling hands and frightened eyes remind the Straw Hats that the world is not cruel by nature, it is made cruel by indifference. Nami's compassion, Sanji's fury, and Luffy's defiance converge into one truth, that no dream is worth innocence sacrificed. Oda drew those panels with haunting softness, framing the children against impossible colors, pastel tones masking horror. In rescuing them, the Straw Hats reaffirm their core philosophy. Freedom has no meaning unless it protects those who cannot fight for it. Fact 96. The revelation of Trafalgar. Law's alliance with Luffy opens a new chapter of the story's emotional depth, two men united not by trust, but by mutual necessity. Law's calm intellect and hidden grief serve as foil to Luffy's wild simplicity. Oda called their partnership a conversation between opposites. Together they challenge Doflamingo, the smiling tyrant of Dressrosa, and in doing so, ignite the war that will shake the new world. The alliance is not friendship yet, but it carries the same rhythm, the sound of two hearts that beat for freedom in different keys. Fact 97. Dressrosa unfolds as tragedy dressed in color. Oda's most theatrical arc, it dances between beauty and brutality, showing a world where joy is weaponized. Doflamingo, the puppet master, controls smiles, toys, and hearts with invisible strings, turning innocence into performance. His world is vibrant but hollow, a carnival of control. Against him, Luffy's straightforward honesty becomes revolution. Every punch he throws tears through illusion, revealing pain beneath spectacle. When the people finally rise, their cries are not for revenge but for truth, the sound of reality reclaiming its voice from the laughter of tyranny. Fact 98. Law's past, told through the tragedy of Flevance and Corazon's sacrifice, reveals the human heart of the New World's cruelty. The boy who watched his city die of a sickness born from greed finds salvation in a fool, a man who pretended to be clumsy to hide his kindness. Corazon's dying words, "I love you," echo through Law's life like a heartbeat he tries to forget. Oda described their story as the antidote to despair, showing that even in a world consumed by poison, love can still bloom quietly, unannounced, and change everything it touches. Fact 99. When Luffy defeats Doflamingo, it is not triumph but catharsis. The sky splits, the ground collapses, and for a moment, silence follows chaos. The citizens of Dressrosa, turned back into humans, after years of being toys, look at the sun as if seeing it for the first time. Oda fills the air with feathers, not debris, the fall of an angel who never was. Doflamingo's smirk lingers, however, because villains in One Piece never die quietly. They live on as reminders. The war ends, but the system remains, waiting for the next dreamer to challenge it. Fact 100. The Straw Hats sail away from Dressrosa, carrying scars, alliances, and a deeper understanding of the world's fragile balance. The sea feels different now, darker, heavier, more aware of itself. Yet amid exhaustion, laughter returns, faint but persistent, like the first light after storm. Luffy's smile, broader than the horizon, reminds them all that even if the world government, the Yonko, or fate itself stand in their way, they will keep moving forward. The Thousand Sunny cuts through the waves, a small ship in an infinite ocean, and the wind whispers what One Piece has always meant. The journey itself is the treasure. Fact 101. The four emperors, the Yonko, are less rulers and more living storms, each one a law unto themselves, shaping the new world's tides with will alone. Oda designed them to represent the four extremes of human ambition: Whitebeard's love, Shanks's balance, Big Mom's hunger, and Kaido's despair. They are gods who bleed, monarchs without crowns, their very existence proof that power can liberate or consume depending on who holds it. The seas they rule are not territories but philosophies, and when Luffy declares he will surpass them all, it is not arrogance, but the ocean daring to dream again. Fact 102. Big Mom's Tato Land, with its candy-colored skies and singing houses, is a nightmare disguised as utopia, a place where harmony is enforced by appetite. Every citizen lives under the threat of her hunger pangs. Their lives literally weighed in pieces of soul. Oda painted her world in bright tones precisely to make its horror gentle, the pastel palette of tyranny. Big Mom herself embodies maternal excess, love warped into possession, care turned into consumption. Her dream of a world where all races dine together is noble in intention, but monstrous in method, a mirror of twisted kindness. Fact 103. Kaido, the so-called strongest creature in the world, is tragedy given form, a warrior searching for death in a world too weak to grant it. His immortality is his curse, his strength, his prison. Oda described him as a man whose dream is to lose. Every suicide attempt, every battle waged, is an act of longing, not rage, the desire to feel something, anything, beyond victory. His obsession with war is not lust for power but yearning for meaning, and when he looks to the sky and drinks, it feels less like defiance and more like prayer. Fact 104. The Wano arc begins as myth and ends as revelation, a land sealed from the world for centuries. Its mountains stand like walls around grief. Wano is both cradle and coffin, the birthplace of the swords that shaped history and the graveyard of those who wielded them. Its isolation mirrors Japan's own, a nation hidden in beauty and pain. Oda said he wanted Wano to feel like home and history colliding, every blossom, every ghost, Every blade hums with the weight of generations who died waiting for dawn to break over their closed sky. Fact 105. Kozuki Oden's story is the tragedy of freedom devoured by time. Born too large for his era, too bright for his world, he embodied the chaos of life unfiltered. His laughter was legend, his courage contagious. He danced in the streets for years, mocked by his people, to protect them from a truth they could not bear. When the cauldron boiled, and he stood within it smiling, his death transcended narrative. It became scripture. Oden was born to boil, he said, turning pain into prophecy, showing that some flames burn to light the way for others. Fact 106. The Akazaya Nine, Oden's retainers, represent loyalty, distilled to its purest form. They carry his dream across decades of ruin, aging but unbroken. Ghosts, walking through history with swords drawn, their charge to open Wano's borders becomes the moral core of the arc, not nationalism, but communion with the world. When they charge Kaido, knowing death awaits, their roars shake the heavens, not because they expect victory, but because loyalty, when untainted by reward, becomes a kind of eternity. In their final bow, the past itself kneels before the future. Fact 107. Luffy's alliance with Law and Kid during the Onigashima raid is chaos sculpted into destiny. 3 captains, each with ego enough to split the sky, forced into harmony by necessity. Their bickering feels almost divine, a chorus of clashing dreams that somehow finds rhythm. Oda described their teamwork as a band that never practices but plays perfectly. Their unity is messy, improvised, full of miscommunication, yet it works, because faith in One Piece has always been instinct, not logic. Together, they turn war into symphony, defying fate with laughter sharp enough to cut through thunder. Fact 108. Zoro's duel with King beneath the shattered dome is both battle and awakening. The swordsman who once sought strength for its own sake finally learns that power without understanding is hollow. King's wings burn, Zoro's spirit roars, and amid the flames he hears the whisper of his blades, a dialogue between man and weapon, life and death. When he raises Enma, channeling Haki born of faith, he becomes not killer, but conductor, guiding every scream, every heartbeat into harmony. The moment his sword cuts through darkness, it feels like the world remembering how to breathe again. Fact 109. Sanji's internal conflict during Wano, torn between his humanity and the cold perfection of his family's science, embodies the series' ongoing meditation on identity. When he destroys his raid suit, rejecting the part of him that would make him emotionless, it is an act of self-love disguised as rebellion. Oda drew that scene with tenderness, flames curling softly around the metal. "I'm not a soldier," he says. "I'm the cook." His hands, meant for creation, refuse to serve destruction. In that refusal, One Piece finds its most human truth. Power means nothing without compassion. Fact 110. When Luffy rises to face Kaido in his final form, draped in laughter, his body flowing like cartoon chaos itself, the story becomes myth unbound. The Gear 5th transformation, a manifestation of pure freedom. The sun god Nika, long whispered in legend, returns not as deity, but as joy incarnate. Luffy's heartbeat becomes the drums of liberation, his smile the dawn breaking through storm. Oda said he wanted it to feel like the moment a child wakes from a nightmare and starts laughing. It is not ascension, it is return, the universe remembering that joy was always divine. Fact 111. As the fires of Onigashima fade and the drums of liberation echo through the sky. The night over Wano feels softer than it has in generations, a sky that once held only thunder now alive with quiet starlight, as though the heavens themselves are sighing in relief. Oda lets silence linger longer than sound, and in that stillness you can almost hear the ghosts Odin, Toki, the fallen samurai smiling somewhere beyond sight. The dawn that follows is not a roar, but a whisper, the slow turning of time's wheel as light brushes faces that have waited too long to feel its warmth. Fact 112. Momonosuke's rise as Wano's new shogun is not victory, but inheritance, the weight of history placed upon a child's shoulders, the kind of responsibility that forces innocence to grow teeth. His voice trembles when he speaks, yet within it there is strength born of grief and gratitude. Oda draws his posture deliberately awkward, a boy pretending to be his father until the pretending becomes truth. When he looks to the open borders and promises to protect his people, it feels like a bridge being built between eras, the dead and the living shaking hands in the language of promise. Fact 113. Yamato's decision to stay behind and walk the path of Odin rather than join Luffy's crew resonates like a heartbeat caught between two worlds. They are the echo of inherited will, proof that freedom is not always found by sailing away, but sometimes by standing still and protecting the soil where dreams were born. Their laughter sounds like wind through cherry blossoms, and Oda described them as the spirit that guards the dawn. In Yamato's eyes, you can see the horizon's reflection, the dream continuing, unbroken, waiting for its next tide. Fact 114. When the Straw Hats finally leave Wano, the sea greets them with new faces, new tempests, and new rumors, the world shifting beneath their sails. The newspapers scream of Luffy as one of the 4 emperors, his name now carved into the same mythic pantheon he once sought to challenge. Yet aboard the Thousand Sunny, nothing changes. Luffy still naps, Sanji still bickers, Usopp still boasts. Oda ensures that greatness in One Piece is never distance from humanity, but a deeper return to it. The higher they rise, the humbler their laughter becomes. Fact 115. The world beyond Wano begins to unravel. Islands vanish, nations revolt, and the ancient powers stir beneath the surface. Oda paints the world government not as a villain, but as a dying god, its strength rotting from within, its secrets too heavy to contain. The 5 elders whisper of prophecies and weapons, their faces masked by calm terror. Meanwhile, the name of Nika, the sun god, spreads like wildfire. Hope and fear travel the same roads. The age of balance collapses, and in its place rises something beautiful and unpredictable, the age of awakening. Fact 116. Shanks, moving once more, after years of watching from the edge of the story, becomes the embodiment of patience fulfilled. His ship, the Red Force, cuts through the waves with elegance born from restraint. Oda calls him the guardian of equilibrium, a man who understands that sometimes the greatest act of strength is to wait. When he finally meets Luffy again, the moment will not be about reunion, but realization that both have become men worthy of the same sea. Until then, Shanks's laughter drifts across the horizon, soft and timeless, guiding the next generation home. Fact 117. Blackbeard, lurking in the shadows, emerges as chaos incarnate, his 2 devil fruits turning him into contradiction itself, darkness and destruction, void and quake. Oda writes him not as a villain to be hated, but as the ultimate what-if of the pirate dream, the reflection of every choice that could have gone differently. Where Luffy sees freedom as joy, Teach sees it as hunger. Their destinies spiral toward collision, two storms circling the same eye. Every laugh of his is thunder, every silence a gathering of clouds. In him, the age of dreams finds its most dangerous believer. Fact 118. The revelation of the ancient weapons, Poseidon, Pluton, and Uranus, brings the story's mythic threads full circle. Oda envisioned them not merely as weapons, but as metaphors for choice, destruction, creation, and transformation. Poseidon's voice in the Sea Kings, Pluton's hidden blueprint in Wano, Uranus's whisper in the sky, all speak of humanity's timeless temptation to rewrite the world. Robin's decision to continue searching for their truth is not ambition but duty, because she understands that power's existence must be known before it can be contained. Her quest remains the quiet heartbeat beneath every battle. Fact 119. As the Straw Hats sail toward the final island, their laughter feels lighter, their worries older, their bonds unbreakable. Every member carries ghosts within them, yet the ship feels alive with gratitude. Frankie polishes the railings while, humming softly, Nami traces old maps with new certainty. Zoro sharpens his swords beneath the stars, and Luffy stares into the night sky, grinning at the unknown. The ocean is the same as it always was, endless, uncaring, magnificent, and the crew has learned not to conquer it, but to dance with it, trusting the tide as if it were a friend. Fact 120. The treasure of One Piece, still unseen, yet deeply felt, is not a chest of gold, but a circle, completed the journey of laughter and loss, of rebellion and reverence, of hearts that refuse to surrender. Oda once said, "When people find out what the One Piece is, they will laugh. That laughter will not be mockery but relief, the realization that the journey itself was the gift, that friendship is the eternal dawn." As the thousand sunny sails beneath a sky painted in orange and pink, the waves whisper their good night, and the sea, as always, promises one more dream.